Hi, welcome everybody. I am James. I'm going to quickly run through in this short video and try and explain exactly what an HTTP request is, how you use them every day without even realizing, and just give you a bit of background knowledge to what they are without getting too confused with the technical jargon. So what we're going to cover today, very briefly, what an HTTP request is, how a web page on the internet is requested using the request response model, how you already use them every day without realizing, and then a quick look at how to examine them within your web browser, and then we'll summarize quickly at the end. So what is an HTTP request? It stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It sounds very grandiose, but don't get too bogged down with it. Just know that it's an acronym that stands for that. And the important part there is that it's a transfer protocol, and it is really the fundamental building block of the web, and it's the protocol or communication method that is used to communicate between two computers, namely the browser on your computer and a web server somewhere on the web. It's an agreed standard that was developed at the birth of the internet, and like I say, it's the foundation for the web. And like I said, don't get too caught up in the technical sound of it. It's really just a method of two things going back and forth and communicating. So the way it works is using something called the request response model, and that in itself is just a very basic way for two computers to talk to each other. One computer asks for something and the other then provides it with some sort of response. So if you can see in this quite boring diagram below, on the left we have a web browser on your computer. It makes a request, which would be normally just a web page, and then an HTTP server, which is just a web server somewhere on the internet, receives that request, routes it, and then says, oh, okay, here you go, here's the web page that you were looking for, and that is the response. So a very basic example of this would be me entering google.com in my web browser. I'm basically shooting that request off to the internet and saying, hey, please can you give me the home page for google.com? That finds its way through various methods to a server at Google's end. It receives that request and then very quickly responds back with, here you go, here's the home page, in the form of the actual home page itself. All this happening in fractions of a second. So as per my previous slide, you already use these every day, and they are absolutely everywhere on the web. You can't interact with the web without them. So anytime you use the web on your phone, tablet, computer, you're using the HTTP protocol without even knowing about it, and you're using the request response model to do that. You probably make hundreds of thousands, if not more, HTTP requests every single day without even realizing. And it's also worth noting that although this might sound like computer talk, you already intuitively know about the request response model as a human, even if the name isn't that intuitive. It's not only how computers communicate with each other, but also how we communicate as humans. So obviously a simple request might be something like, can you pass me that cup over there? And the response would be, sure, here you go. So it's already intuitive to how we communicate as people. So that's a very simplified version of how it works, but the principle is the same regardless. So each web page you request is actually made up of multiple HTTP requests, not just a single one. That first one is an HTTP request saying, please give me that web page, but subsequently you'll get a bunch of other sub HTTP requests that then build out part of the page, other parts of the page that you've requested. So that would be things like images and other languages that the web uses to make the page interactive and style it, such as JavaScript and CSS and other things. So you get the initial request for the page and then a bunch of sub HTTP requests that build out the page as well. Again, all working on the same principle. You can actually view all these sub requests as well as the main requests and the response that you get from the web server, all from within your browser. They're available in all, you can view in all web browsers. They're just not exposed by default. And what you need to do, for example, in Google Chrome, is just right click and select inspect, and you will see the developer tools pop up at the bottom. Looks very complicated, but really it's just an extra pane that shows what's going on in the background. And if you see here, the third tab along is called the network tab, and that is where you will be able to view all the individual HTTP requests. So for example, you can see on my screen here, the first request is for google.com. That was that initial request saying, please give me that web page, like I explained at the beginning. And then subsequently, you have all the other requests that go that get responded to the browser in order to build out that page. So these are things like images and other components of the web page. If you double click on one of those, you will see the actual image itself, and that in itself would be an HTTP request. It's worth noting some of these other columns here, and you may get into, you can see the different types. So PNG, for example, is an image type, and various other types there. The status is just a way of explaining what kind of response you got from the web server, and they have various codes. And then you've got some other information on how long it took to come back. So as you can see, all within measured in milliseconds, and a good website will respond in sub 3 to 400 milliseconds for most assets. So all very, very quick, fractions of a second. So in summary of this short video, HTTP is the building block of the web. It's absolutely everywhere. It's how browsers communicate with servers via the request response model to get web pages and their various assets. You use them every single day without realizing, be it on your phone, tablet, or desktop. You can examine them for yourself in your browser, and as a developer, that's very useful for debugging and seeing what's going on behind the scenes. And they just become very useful when understanding web development and the web at large. Okay, that's everything for this video. This is my first video, so if you liked it, please like or subscribe for more videos, and thank you for listening.